Hi, everyone. Welcome to Forbes Newsroom. I'm Diane Brady, Assistant Managing Editor at Forbes, and I am with Chase Peterson-Withorn, who is Deputy Wealth Editor. And of course, Chase, you're looking very awake, despite the fact that the Forbes 400 has just landed. Tell us about what's changed this year.
Yeah, so it's been sort of a mixed year, not a great year for the 400 richest people in America.
They suffer like us.
Yeah, yeah, they do suffer like us a little bit. Collectively, they're worth $500 billion less than they were worth a year ago, which sounds pretty bad until you realize that they are still worth a collective $4 trillion. So I think, like many Americans, if you looked at your investment portfolio, you might be down quite a bit from a year ago, but you might be still sitting up a lot from where you were a few years ago, and that is definitely true for the richest people in America. It was kind of a rough year, but they're doing great even compared to just a couple years ago.
Are the sources of wealth, has it shifted at all? I mean, obviously, I know it's primarily, I'm sure, equity, big companies, but has anything shifted in terms of either how they're gaining their wealth or deploying it, since that's something we look at more and more?
Yeah, billionaires make money in all sorts of ways. I mean, if you look around your house, there's probably a billionaire attached to many, many, many of the things that.
It'd be funny if we put their faces on all the products that we use, right? Jeff Bezos' face on Alexa.
Yeah, you have to do your best, I think, on the wealth team to try not to categorize everything that you encounter with, oh, this is this person's thing and this is this person's. Um, but yeah, you can make money, in all sorts of ways. Then the vast majority of the wealth that we find that billionaires hold is still tied up in the companies that made them wealthy, that they still maybe run. Maybe they've sold and diversified a little bit over time, but really the wealth is tied up in, a company generally makes you extremely wealthy to get to this level, and maybe you diversify later on, and for no small percentage of the list, maybe about a third of the list, the money comes from whatever you inherited. But you can make money in all sorts of ways, and so that's definitely still true. But there are some industries that are doing better than others. For example, the oil and gas billionaires are having a pretty good year, actually. I mean, we all saw what the prices at the pump were.
Thank you, Putin, perhaps? No.
Yeah, thank you, Putin. Yeah, maybe. It's been a pretty good time for the oil and gas billionaires, but tech billionaires are really being hit hard. The market sell-off has impacted all sorts of sectors, but I think that the tech billionaires are something like $315 billion poorer than they were last year. So it's more than 2/3 of the entire drop, or about 2/3 of the entire drop can really be attributed just to tech billionaires, people like Jeff Bezos and such.
So this list lands, but a lot of people, when they go to the Forbes site, see real-time billionaires. So what is the value of this particular list that comes out now, every September since, I believe, 1982? Is this just a baseline on which we then sort of measure the volatility of their stocks and such?
Yeah, so basically on the Forbes site, every day we we have a net worth estimate for all of the billionaires in the world, including the 400 richest Americans. And every day you can go to the Forbes site and you can watch their net worths go up or down based on the prices of the stocks that they're invested in, exchange rates for foreign investments, things like that. And so when we look at the 400 list, it's sort of we take a snapshot of a certain day, one day for everybody, and we say, as of this day, these are the 400 people in America who are the wealthiest. And it's sort of a way for us to take a step back and figure out, okay, what's going on now? What was compared to what was going on a year ago? And sort of analyze it and all of that. And so we sort of use it as an opportunity to just say, okay, this is what everybody was worth on this day, but what does it mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, and let's say I'm from Central Casting, has the makeup of the list shifted much in terms of either demographics, gender, people of color? I mean, all the things where typically a lot of people are underrepresented on this list.
Yeah, it's pretty slow and steady for a list like this. The billionaires list of all the billionaires in the world. We're always finding great fortunes in new places, new parts of the world. Um, in America, especially, it's definitely slow and steady, and so it certainly is a list that is very much still dominated by men and still dominated by white men, and it's maybe not entirely surprising because structurally, the requirements to amass a fortune of this size, it's not easy to do, and it's hard enough if you don't have extra things working against you. And so, there aren't that many women, and of the women that there are, a lot of them are heirs, whether their
Right.
parents founded a fortune or whether their spouse died or something like that. But there still are a good number of self-made women on the list, and the list over time is generally more and more self-made as great family fortunes get spread and sort of dissipate and people fritter them away. And as more people continue to create great products and very successful businesses, and so I think it's about 69% of this year's list.
Any intriguing stories? I know that, I think of it as some of the best investigative journalism we do because people like Patagonia's founder do not like to be on the list. I think that was a big factor in him giving away his company recently. But what are some of the intriguing trends, people, or stories that you see from this year's list to keep an eye on?
Yeah. I think it's interesting to see, for example, the crypto billionaires who had a particularly rough year. We lost a few of them.
Are they still, I was going to say, are they still billionaires? Because, that's.
Some are billionaires. Even fewer are still on the Forbes 400. I think we went from 7 to 4 this year. So we've lost a few. But then, but at the same time, in downturns is often when billionaires are made, or when billionaires find ways to really level up their wealth. These people oftentimes are cash rich, even in downturns, and they buy stuff up, at a bargain. And so, for example, you could see Sam Bankman-Fried, one of the youngest, self-made billionaires in the world, one of the youngest people on the Forbes 400. He's 30. He's been buying up crypto companies and propping up other companies and doing things like that. And so, it will be interesting to see what the payoff is for that, in the future. And there are other people on the 400 like that who sort of are smart enough and are fortunate enough to be in a position where they can follow the Warren Buffett advice of being greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. So right now people are fearful, and there are plenty of billionaires who have the money to sort of be greedy and keep amassing great wealth.
Let me ask another question, Chase, which is I know that some types of wealth are very easy to track, and I'm certainly aware that there are many people who believe we underrepresent or overrepresent. It's very political and personal and, ego-driven as to how people assess their own wealth. What are some of the more interesting or challenging ways that you track people's wealth? I mean, or some of the games that people play?
Yeah, sure. So, it's interesting because sometimes we'll put a list like this out, and there will be a criticism that it's a list of generally old white men, for example. But our role in this is really to just count the money and find it where we can find it. And so, I think it's really that's an important point, and it's something that we try to keep in mind. And we try to highlight the success stories that are outside of that, as much as we can. But at the end of the day, you kind of can only work with what you have. And,
Right.
And our job is to sit there and sort of count the money, and the analysis of it and all of that is that's a bigger picture sort of.
And some are more transparent than others, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that is, just with that caveat, I will say, it is truly one of the biggest investigative projects in business journalism that's done every year. I mean, it's an enormous project to try to dig into the great fortunes of the the people in America, many of whom would really rather that we didn't. And it's important that we do, because it's important to know who these people are. They hold great power, great authority, And it's very important that we track that. But a lot of them really would rather we didn't. I mean, of course, why would you want to be on the cover of Forbes magazine, or be featured in Forbes magazine for your wealth if you can have all of that wealth and nobody know who you are? There are a lot of billionaires who feel that way. Not all of them, but there are a lot who do. And so, it can be really tough to track what they own. And so, for those who have public companies, it's pretty easy because, if they own a certain amount of the company or if they work for the company, they generally have to tell you how much they own. And
Right.
it's a little more complicated than that, but they do generally have to at least give you a good idea, something to work with. And, but then for people who have private businesses, it's really tough. And for people in the world of crypto, for all of the talk of, how transparent crypto is and all of that, when it comes to tracking the wealth held by, the great crypto fortunes, it's extremely difficult. So yeah, it really depends. And some of the billionaires work with us very closely and we have, long working relationships with, and and other billionaires hang up on us if they answer the phone at all. And others tell us stories that we don't exactly believe. And we've written about that a lot over time. And it's
Very
it's
much
important
so.
for us to hear out what everybody has to say. We run our numbers by everybody, but also, trust but verify is kind of the guiding, motto for all of that. And so there's a lot of claims that we can't verify that we, are very careful not to publish.
Well, great job. And of course, I hope everybody checks it out because life has certainly changed over the past year and it's reflected in the list. So thanks for joining us, Chase.
Yeah, thanks for having me.